Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. We all have circumstances or situations that make us feel something or someone is missing or disappointing. If you don't right now, you will. Join us as we continue our happiness series, learning how to reframe, refute, and replace our negative self-talk. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're back to talk about Lesson 2 in our Happiness School book. Actually, it's called Happy School. I'm getting our Gretchen Rubin series from a couple of years ago mixed up with this one, but I guess we just cannot stop talking about happiness on Midlife Matters, and we're going through and trying to delve deeper into that subject with this series. So this is a different book. It's called Happy School by Julie Gordon, and as a refresh from our first episode last month in this series, this is a nonfiction book about happiness, which teaches its lessons through a fictional story. So listeners, don't turn off the episode. Don't think, oh, well, I'm not reading the book, so I'm not going to get anything out of this. We're going to summarize briefly where we are in the book at the beginning, but the rest of it is just all about our lives, how we've tried to apply it this month. And I really think that the principles can be applicable whether you're reading the story or not. Like I said, the book is called Happy School by Julie Gordon. So if you do want to pick it up and follow along, we're going to be doing this series once a month all year. So you have plenty of time. But if you'll remember, Darby is a young woman. She's about 32, and we meet her on page 1. She's stuck in a dead-end job with a boss that doesn't appreciate her, a boyfriend of 2 years who she's not really in love with, and a mother who is crazy. So basically, Mindy and Julie, she has a lot of problems, and she has no idea how to get her life on track.
She's messed up.
Yeah, she's definitely messed up. And for the purposes of teaching, one of the characters who comes to her in each chapter is a happiness genie, and he is helping her learn principles and skills to be happy in the life she currently has. Now, again, if you're not into fantasy, do not turn off the episode because we mentioned the word genie. Because I would never read a book with a genie, except for this one, because it is a teaching tool, and you could call it anything you want. You could just call it like today's lesson, but she just phrases. It could be anything.
Yes. Like I said, this is the second time I've read this book, and I'm working through the book this time, not just reading it. And I think there's some really life-changing principles in here because the battle is in the mind, and it's always hard to change your thinking, but it's really an effective tool to learning to be happy in your circumstances because we can't control those, but we can just control how we think about them.
Yeah, this is something that has come up over the past couple of weeks in my own house, where my family is really big on working out and trying to eat right, and going to the gym. And the idea of training your mind has come up more in the past couple of weeks with my teenage boys. And so this is a topic that these principles are life-giving. And I'm actually really thrilled I'm going through the book right now because there are other people in my life, aside from myself, that will be helpful. These principles are helpful even in my parenting.
Yeah. It's funny when you read a nonfiction book, you're always like, oh, this would help so-and-so so much.
Yeah. I'm going to gift this book to some people. I think, hey, you should look at this. You really struggle with that. No,
or just send them our episode.
I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
If you don't know, that's total sarcasm.
Well, let's review the principles that we talked about last month. There were two main ones. One, we learned that our emotions come from our thoughts. It's our thoughts, not reality, that determine our emotions. We are the producer of our emotions, not the victim of our emotions. And this principle is still a hard one for me to grasp, but the point of it is that if we change our thoughts, then our emotions will also follow. And she gives the example of if you think there's somebody following you in the dark, you're going to be scared and your emotions are going to reflect that. But if you really looked around and saw there really isn't anyone there, you would be walking comfortably and confidently. So I think it's just a matter of what we think is happening sometimes produces emotions, whereas if we thought about it differently, our emotions would be completely different.
I have found this one particular thing, this first principle, to be so completely annoying. I have thought about this so much, and I have been more aware of my thoughts and emotions this month, and it's completely annoying because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not feeling that great. Why am I not feeling great? What was the thought I just had? I have never been more aware of my emotions and thoughts. And I'm like, it's so hard to retrain your thoughts to try to take every thought captive. So as much as I have found this annoying and just sometimes just feel confused, I'm like, wait, what was that thought? Trying to capture those thoughts. It is an activity. It's an exercise. It's a learned skill. And it has not necessarily been easy, though I have been more aware. So if anybody else out there is struggling, I feel like a crazy person in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute, stop. What was that? What are you thinking? Like,
right.
Well, and Marie, if you're doubting, the link there, I think it is very easy to think, well, thinking happy thoughts doesn't always make me happy, but I can see that negative thoughts always guarantee negative emotions.
True.
That's an easy link to see.
Right.
Yeah. Yes. And our second principle was that we as humans are also capable of thinking about our thinking, and we can interrupt our thinking. Since we can only think about one thing at a time, we can consciously stop thinking one thought by intentionally thinking about another. And this is another principle, like we all think we can multitask. We think, oh, well, I can think about this thing that's making me sad, depressed, angry on one hand, and then also think about my parenting or what's for dinner or be present in the moment with my kids, when really we can only think about one thing at a time, and that is affecting and coloring everything else we're doing.
Yeah, you're just jumping from thought to thought. You're not really thinking about them all at the same time.
All right. Well, Julie and Mindy, this month we are going to talk about what to do with those things that are missing and disappointing in our lives. And the author calls these our WMDs. What's missing and disappointing. So different than weapons of mass destruction, which I keep on mixing them up with. These are WMDs.
What's missing and disappointing.
I feel like those can be linked, though. I mean,
yes,
sometimes our thoughts can be weapons of mass destruction.
That's true,
They
Mindy.
definitely can. Yes. Well, there are times that the author says that it is appropriate to think about our WMDs. But then we also need to leave them at those times. And we're going to learn how to do that. And we're also going to learn how to reframe, refute, and replace our negative self-talk. There's a lot of words in there that we need to break down.
You're like, wait a minute, what? Because I'm still trying to capture every thought over here.
Yeah. Basically, the things that bother you in your life, you're going to learn to think of them in a new way, and they're not going to bother you as much, hopefully.
Right.
They're either not true, or you can spin it in a little more positive direction, or you can totally replace that thought with a new one.
Right. Because we all do have circumstances or situations that make us feel something or someone is missing or disappointing. And even if you don't right at this moment, you either have in the past or you will in the future. None of us escape that.
Right.
Much to our dismay.
I know something I was able to pinpoint was I could really relate with Darby on page 34. There's just this one sentence, and she's kind of giving you a view into her life. And she says, I had a life plan, a good one. I would get married early, have 4 perfect children, at least 1 or 2 would be girls, and play tennis twice a week. My house would be cutting edge design, and my time would be spent mothering, shopping, reading, volunteering, and having interesting people over for dinner parties while my husband climbed his corporate ladder. Yes, that was my original wonderful life plan. This really resonated with me because I think one of the biggest disappointments that I had to overcome in the past was my plan. Like, my expectations of what my life was supposed to be, is supposed to be. And so I could really relate with having expectations and then having them go unmet and being so disappointed.
Yeah, I think we all have a picture of how we think our life's going to unfold. And when it doesn't go that way, it is disappointing. And we can choose to focus on how it didn't measure up, and that's going to be leading to misery, or we can think differently. And that, when we expect it to go our way, I think we're just setting ourselves up for failure, because it's kind of she says on page 40 that it's a fantasy to think that your life will go as you planned it.
Without suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That there's pain in life. Yeah. So, and that's something that, I feel like I had a fairly easy life, until maybe the last 10 years. And that's kind of when my expectations weren't being met. And, it's hard to not dwell on that.
So those thoughts, Julie, would be our what's missing and disappointing. So do you find yourself ruminating on these thoughts? Like, even though you've gone through this book 2 times, or this is your second time, like, do you find yourself thinking about the things that bothered you over the last 10 years less than when you started?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely noticed the connection now, and the habit I'd like to develop is to reject those kind of thoughts more quickly. I find myself thinking about it like you, Mindy, and think, oh, wait, where's this feeling coming from? Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about this. And I catch it, but I'd like to catch it earlier, before you kind of spiral down. I don't think we can ever control what comes into our mind. It's just what we do with it at that point. So,
right.
Yeah, but I don't know, ruminating, that's something I kind of felt like was okay to do. Like I had a right to do, and it's just not good for you. When I am down, I know that I've allowed myself to dwell on what I don't have, or what's disappointing, or what's not working in my life. I do see that connection.
If I could quote the book here really quick, one of the quotes from our genie, from our voice of wisdom, is constant ruminating on negative and discouraging thoughts will leave a chemical imbalance in your brain. When you quarantine or isolate that thought, that WMD, the chemical imbalance of your brain can begin to heal. And along with that, I wanted to point out, this made a lot of sense to me. This other quote, disappointing circumstances, they're inevitable, but discouragement is optional because you can choose your thoughts. And really, like, that's the point, right? Like, life is going to disappoint you. If it hasn't so far, it will.
I need that last quote on a poster.
No, but the discouragement that can set in from the disappointments, those are the heavy weights of life that we sometimes lug around for far too long.
Yeah. All right. Well, we know we can't think about these things all the time, but when are we allowed to think about them? The Genie in Happy School says, yes, you can think about them, but by appointment only. And the rest of the time, like Mindy said, we need to practice quarantining or isolating our thoughts.
I thought it was funny, you said we can think about them during 3 different situations. And I thought it was funny when the genie told Darby that she could only think about her WMDs when she was in one of these 3 situations. Darby says, well, I hope that's morning, noon, and night.
Yeah, that's how it usually tends to go.
All day long.
Hey, just being honest.
Yeah. But the first situation when you have permission to think about these missing and sad things is when you're trying to come up with a fix, an answer, a solution, or if you're writing them in your journal. The second is when you're actually talking to someone who might have answers that can help you. And then the third is when you're in prayer. And then the rest of the time, she says, it's like you're putting them in a box with a lid up on a shelf until one of these times. So you're not ignoring them. You're not burying them, but you're just not allowing yourself to be consumed by these thoughts all day long. And I like a visual. So that helps me. Like, I'm putting this up on the shelf and I'll talk, I'll think about this. Not just never, but, I will. I'll have a specific time to address it.
Well, you're making an active decision about what to do with those thoughts. And I think anytime you can come to that point of actively deciding I will think about these things, but not right now. And even maybe set a time in the future where you then intentionally sit down to do one of those three things, to pray, to seek wisdom, or to research solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least then you're not carrying the burden and remembering it over and over, where then that becomes the ruminating, you know, like you can't let it go because you're worried you're going to forget to be concerned about this. So,
right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Wait a minute. I forgot to be stressed for a second. Hold up. What was I stressed about? Oh yeah. Let me make the list again. You know?
Well, did you guys have any luck with one of them over the other? Like, was waiting until you were in prayer about it more successful for you, or when you were researching solutions or talking to someone? Like, was one of these three more successful for you this month than the other two?
I would say that it should have been prayer maybe, but I would say maybe talking with a friend who might have answers is what I've been doing a lot of. And I think this just kind of hit me that in the past, I have maybe, before I read this book, I didn't have this terminology, but I was maybe good at saying, I'm not going to think about that because I want to be happy. I'm not going to think about it.
Right.
But it wasn't quarantining it for a later time. It was just shoving it away. And I think it's because I really didn't want to fix those problems. You know, I was never looking for a solution. I was just going to pull it off the shelf to ruminate on it again. And then it got to be so miserable. Oh, got to put that back, you know? So I thought that's really interesting that maybe I didn't want to fix them because I thought maybe somebody else should fix them. But what could, and it's not that you fix the circumstance, but you're going to fix your thinking, you know, and because that's the only thing I really can do. So I thought that was that's something I just discovered was maybe I've been good at quarantine, but it was kind of for the wrong reason. So, you know, because some of the situations are beyond my control, but it's just a constant fight to keep your mind in the right place.
Right. Did you find one of them better than the other, Mindy?
Yes, I had several thoughts about this month. Again, I was a total mental case this month, thinking about these different principles and in a good way. But so just for our listeners to kind of have some reference, we are coming off of Thanksgiving week and going into the busy holiday season. And so ironically, I'm not necessarily thinking or getting stressed about what's missing and disappointing in my life. I'm just stressed in general about, the season or all the things or the activities or, whatever. And so I found myself being able to apply these principles in different ways. And ironically, I was able to process out loud, which took me back to our other episode about how we make decisions. And I realized I actually need to process out loud, whereas before I thought I didn't. And so even talking through the Thanksgiving meal or how to handle the day, talking through that with us or with Abby or with a friend from workout class, I found that I was more able to process in a healthy way and then develop a plan of action. Whereas before I was just stressed. I was like, I couldn't pinpoint what to do because I was just stressed by all of it, like looking all of it at the same time. So I really appreciated using those principles and even like, okay, one thing at a time, let's talk out loud. And then I also journaled. I love the journal. I hope that we kind of delve into like how we told her to do that, because I really love that. But that was just very helpful to me to kind of apply that even to, I'll call them little daily stressors. And I will give this one example. We had just gotten through Thanksgiving. That plan had come to fruition. Everybody was happy, fed, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I want to look at next week because I want to plan for when I'm going to have a rest time. Well, big mistake, because this week, now the week after, is even busier than Thanksgiving week. And I realized like my boys have basketball games every night. I have a women's event. I have some classes I'm teaching. Like a lot of extra stuff was on the calendar. And I started getting overwhelmed looking at the following. I was like, whoa, stop, put it on the shelf. We're going to deal with that when it comes. And so some of these principles, I'm just trying to give little practical daily examples, because even using that principle to set not look too far in the future, one day at a time, one activity at a time, and then develop a plan of action for each activity at its appropriate time. So, yes, all of it was helpful. I didn't really answer your question in one succinct way. I'm sorry.
No, I thought they all were helpful too. I think the problem is that I usually get them backwards. Like, first I start researching solutions on my own, Then I talk to anyone else who I could possibly find to also find out what they think. Then my last thing is pray, which it really should be pray. Then, start looking for solutions. But once I have not been able to figure out the problem on my own or quarantine the thoughts on my own or get through the situation on my own, then I decide, maybe I'll pray about this, which is the exact opposite of what we should be doing.
All channels have failed. I am now praying.
Yes.
You're not the only one, Marie.
No. Yeah. Well, the second part of this month's lesson was to reframe. These are 3 RE words. You're supposed to reframe, refute, or replace your what's missing and disappointing thoughts, your WMDs. And she asked us to list in our journal all our WMDs in one column, and then create a column for actions or ways to reframe, refute, or replace those thoughts. And did you find this helpful? So, Mindy, you were saying that you really like the journaling activity. Was this one of the things that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, it broke it down. Like the voice of wisdom, the voice of truth is helping you practically separate the problems and then intentionally asking you to think of solutions. But it's amazing how writing something down to put it in a succinct sentence, even if you can get it down to 1 or 2 sentences, like you've already done a lot of the heavy lifting there by focusing in on what the thought is, but then actively, I don't know, there's something about that exercise of writing down in the journal and, the 3 columns that he's telling her to do. And because it's kind of forcing you to do the problem, but also now, all right, let's move forward. Let's start thinking about some solutions. And it's funny because I loved Darby, the character at this point, because she will write down a problem. She's like, I don't even know what to do with that. And she'll, and I appreciate that because that's how it feels sometimes. You're like, okay, I'm going to write this down, but there's nothing that can be done. Like it's not going to get fixed
right. There's no way to spin this.
Nope.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought this was kind of a challenge, but, Now listing the WMDs was very easy.
Yes.
I had my 2-page list and I felt really good about that. And then I just got stuck on the action and the reframing my thoughts because I thought there's nothing I can say positive about these, similar to Darby. I'll just share one because I want to say here that John's cancer diagnosis, I had to remove from this list. Like that's not just disappointing. Or, I mean, it's in a whole category by itself. And I actually even talked to Julie Gordon about that yesterday. So, but with his diagnosis has come a lot of collateral losses that have me sad about things. Like basically our whole lifestyle has just been kind of ripped from us, everything has changed and nothing is the same. And one of the things I wrote down was just that we don't have much of a social life anymore. And I do, like with a friend or, I can hike or walk or go to lunch. But as far as John and I together, that's just gone away because he is very tired and he's usually in bed by 5 or 6 o'clock. Well, you can't go out with another couple who's still working when you're kind of done by that time of night. So it's easy for me to just kind of ruminate on that and think, oh, woe is me. How sad, how terrible. And so I started thinking, okay, what can my action be? And I said, I just can't focus on what I don't have. I really have to fight hard against self-pity. Who am I supposed to be in this time of grief? Like, how can I be the best me in a really bad situation? Like, I don't want my kids to hear me whine. This isn't fair. Life isn't fair. I've done that enough. And I want to be strong for them. I want to be a light for them. I want to show them how to navigate this. So all my actions are kind of pointing against self-pity. And then my reframe, refute, replace thoughts are, okay, how can I make the dinner hour better? Sometimes I eat out with a friend. One night a friend came over and we cooked together. Sometimes I eat early and I lay in bed with John and we watch a movie. And I think I have a lot of time now in the evenings to learn new things. Like I get to read. I get to sew. I've been sewing a lot. I get to listen to podcasts. I get to listen to books. And, if I only think about what I don't have, then I never get to the exploring my other options, So that's how I worked that column out. My WMD, my action, and my 3 R's.
That's really good, Julie. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's not easy, but
No, because you can't get rid of the things that are facts, like things that have happened, are happening. You can't change the circumstance sometimes.
No, I've got no choice, This is what was dealt and I have no choice. And I mean, that's true with most things. Like, people have miscarriages, people lose somebody in a car accident or to COVID or whatever. And we just don't have any other choice but to accept it. And like I said, there's time for grief and we can talk about that later. Like that's not just something disappointing.
Right.
That's a little different, but I'm just talking about the other things that I could focus on that surround it.
Sure.
That I just can't let spiral me down because there's a lot that could do that. Well, and I wanted to add, I think we're talking here about non-emergency things, kind of like Mindy, what you just talked about. Like these are just the stresses of life, just the
right.
The everyday stress.
Yeah.
Not real emergencies.
Right. Well, do you ever notice that your negative self-talk increases when you're stressed? And do you find yourself maybe catching yourself in that more after reading these chapters? I mean, I just think it's a no-brainer to say, yes, our negative self-talk increases when we're stressed. But I don't know that I always notice it in the moment.
I felt like a mental case during the Thanksgiving week because we had a house full. There's a major meal. It's a holiday. Okay, a holiday in general is going to add some stress. I'm sorry, but it does. All right. It's wonderful and it's stressful.
Right.
And so it's easy. And I caught myself, and the thoughts that I was able to capture were not pretty. And some that I was able to capture was, nobody ever helps me. I have to do everything by myself. If I didn't do this, it's not going to happen. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Like stopping myself and reminding myself, oh, they did this and this and this. I'm like, well, fine. Sure. They helped with a little bit, But it was just ironic because, in the heat of the moment, you think you're all alone. And you're the superhero and nobody's pitching in and and people are willing to help. And so that was a thought that I was able to capture and like slap myself out of. And I can say like this was a much more enjoyable week because as soon as a thought would come in and I would capture it, when I figured out, how I was feeling and trying to capture it, then I was able to then be more hospitable and loving and kind. That's not always on the to-do list when you're thinking about hosting or preparing for a house full. You don't usually add kind to the list of things to do.
Right.
But I really did put that on my list this past week and with great results. I'm so thankful. I did feel like a mental case. Personally, I'm glad nobody could see the war that was going on in my own mind.
Aren't we glad that people can't see our negative self-talk?
That's true. And I love how she uses this verse of scripture when she says, the little foxes can spoil the vineyard. Like that just stuck in my mind. And she's saying that to remind us that it's important to take control of even the little thoughts. Like, like you think, oh, that's not that big a deal. That's not that significant. But, it can get you worked up. One thought leads to another and it's just consuming. I really noticed that when I'm stressed out and then something is not working like it's supposed to. We had plumbing issues over Thanksgiving.
Oh my.
I was in the shower and then I noticed my feet were in 2 inches, 3 inches of water. And, we hadn't had a slow drain. It just happened. So we tried to fix it on our own, which I don't recommend. And then by the time we called the plumber, I can't get there till this day. So it was like the night before Thanksgiving. And he wasn't sure if he was going to fix it. And I was just really negative about the whole thing. And then, I caught myself and I thought, okay, what's the big deal if we have to go over Thanksgiving without the use of our bathroom? Like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world. But that's kind of how I was thinking. It's like, if I don't have my shower and my toilet, then my life is terrible, and that's just not true, And another time that I thought about this example was, I have these blue and white plates that I hang on my kitchen wall. And I counted, I have at least 25 throughout the whole kitchen. Well, they're all really inexpensive, like under $10, except for one. And it was a platter that I paid $80 for at an antique store because it was on sale for half price. I wouldn't have paid $160, but I'd pay $80. It was very unique. It was an antique. And one fell off the wall and shattered. And guess which one it was?
Julie.
It was that one. And the negative talk was so bad. It was like, of course it had to be that one. My life's not terrible enough that I had to lose this plate. It couldn't have been just any old plate. It had to be that one. Bad stuff always happens to me. Of course it was that one. It had to be the irreplaceable one, And it just went on and on and on. And that was before I read the book. So,
well, we can all relate to that. Yes, I love what you said about, like, if we're not stressed, minor inconveniences are a blip and we can handle them. If we're stressed, my goodness, they send us over the edge and all the self-talk comes raining down on our heads along with them.
I love her quote. The situation is unwanted and not preferred, but it's not cataclysmic.
That's right.
And, I think I've always noticed the self-talk, but I just thought it was kind of okay. Like, it doesn't hurt anything. And I just put this together this morning. I thought self-pity is kind of like crack cocaine. Like, it must feel good in the moment. And you think it's not hurting anybody else, but it really leaves you feeling bad afterwards. Now, I don't know what it's like to be on drugs, but it must be that way, because there's something that, for me, that I kind of go towards self-pity, like, something about it feels good initially, and then it leaves you feeling really bad. So trying to remember to take care of those little foxes. Don't let them accumulate.
All right. I do have a really funny little blip right here. You guys know my Thanksgiving tragedy of 9 years ago when the turkey didn't cook?
Yep.
Okay. On Thanksgiving, this could have been cataclysmic in my house, but all the same variables were the same as that Thanksgiving as from 9 years ago. But I had already bought the turkey. Well, I put it in the oven and I've planned the whole day. I go to check and the turkey's supposed to be done and it's cold on the top.
And
Deja
vu.
I'm like, no stinking way. Like, somebody had turned the oven off.
Good.
In the midst of this reheating the turkey. Now the turkey had already been cooked. I was like, well, guess we're going to have a cold turkey. At least it's cooked this year. And so it was so funny. And that's a very lighthearted thing, but it reminded me of all the baggage of the past. And then my son-in-law is new in our home. And I had to explain to him the history of the Silman turkey Thanksgiving saga, and explain why I do the things the way that I do now, to focus on people, not things, people, not food, people, not process,
Yeah.
You probably also had to explain why you quit breathing for a second.
I know. I had to throw that out there, because when I felt the top of the turkey and it was cold, I'm like, the flood of, I was like, of course. So anyways, that was a funny little blip, but yeah, it is nice to look back sometimes and maybe see where there has been progress made.
Definitely.
Right. And we have to remember that we all have, like, baggage, and sometimes, to someone else to reach in there and feel the turkey, Mindy, they might have thought, oh, what's going on here? Is the oven off? But if you have baggage with it, you're going to immediately think, oh no, it's happening again. your reaction is going to be different. And so
Yes.
I guess that kind of leads into, I don't really want to call it awfulizing or catastrophizing, though, that situation, because it's understandable. Like if you have a past history with something, it's going to come out because we're humans.
Yeah, because you're filtering it through that memory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I told my son-in-law, I said, I'm a recovering perfectionist, recovering.
Right.
I had to get broken before I could recover, though.
Yeah.
I do remember a situation where I really wanted something to go a certain way for one of my kids, and then it didn't. And I remember thinking, oh, this just seemed like it would have been so perfect for them. It was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And oh, there just couldn't have been a better fit. And some of those things, were true, but I just had taken a really big disappointment and turned it into something cataclysmic. So I really needed to watch that parade of thoughts. Like my awfulizing was kind of just ruling out anything good coming from that. And, she mentions in the book that there's opportunities are often hidden in unfortunate circumstances. And that was really true in this case too. And it just took time to see that. And that's one of those things where you can look back and say, no, I don't have to do that. I've learned that. And it really just does take away hope for the future when you just act like it's the end of the world when it's not.
Julie, I can totally relate with your thoughts, especially concerning your children. And especially the older they get, the less control you have over their environments and, things that happen to them. So I feel like this is a lesson not only for us personally, but then as moms, that's a whole nother category of letting go, of, writing down these things for our children and really praying for them more than anything else is just praying and letting those things go. Because I can see now there were certain situations in my kid's life that had that thing happened, it wouldn't have been good for them. But at the time I was so invested in this is the only way. Like they're going to be over if this happened. And so it's hard. You're like, okay, for myself, yeah, I can be disappointed. Maybe you come to accept that. But for your kids, you're like, nope, don't want to be disappointed.
Well, were you able to practice dialing down your emotional reactions this month? Like when something came up that you felt like catastrophizing or awfulizing, were you able to take a step back and say, all right, I am disappointed. Like Julie said, this is not wanted or preferred, but it's not cataclysmic. Did you have success in dialing back your emotions?
Yeah, I finally reached that with my plumbing issues. I really hated it, and I hated the thought of going through Thanksgiving with it like that. But I thought, is it really so terrible if I have to live with this another day in the grand scheme of things? No. So I figured, I dialed it down from into the world to just annoyed.
That's good.
It's okay to have a reaction, I think, but just keeping it at the right level. Giving it what it deserves, the emotion it deserves.
Yeah. I had a situation that was bothering me. It was a financial situation. My daughter made a mistake on something that cost us $200. And I hate it when you feel like money just flew out the window for nothing, like literally nothing.
Right.
And so I tried to get the mistake fixed. Like I thought, oh, well, surely if I tell the person that this was a mistake, they'll say, oh, I understand. My kids have done that too. Here, let me help you fix it. No, the other party did not want to fix it, despite me trying to go up the chain of command. And so I finally sat down with the refute, reframe, and what's the other
Refute, reframe, replace.
Yes, and went through this on the chart. Like, I am disappointed that I just flushed $200 down the toilet. Reframe, like, okay, technically I can afford $200. Like, it's not like I'm not going to be able to feed my family. All kids make mistakes. This could be a learning opportunity for her. She probably won't make that same kind of mistake again. Like just trying to walk myself through it. Yes, I'm going to still look for solutions and try to get this fixed. But even if I can't, it's okay. Like I don't need to awfulize and catastrophize this to the point that, bigger than it needs to be. And so does it still annoy me? Yes, but it did help me dial down the negative emotions.
Yeah, it's just a lot of wasted energy. It makes you tired to put that much negative energy into something like that.
Right.
Yeah, I had a similar situation last week, and yeah, it can sometimes be that you're thinking about it negatively before, and then even after, it's like enough.
Mm-hmm.
Any money thing like that's another category that's hard. Money is another issue that it's really hard to kind of let go of being out of control of those situations sometimes. Oh yeah. We have a lot of triggers, is what I'm hearing.
We do. All right. Well, do you spend time dreading activities that you already decided you must do? And how does this negative emotion affect you? And you guys are going to laugh, but I dread exercise. Like, I shouldn't, but like the night before when I have to get out my exercise clothes, it creates all this negative emotion in me because I really just want to sleep in. Like, I don't want to go. Like, I just can't understand those people that are happy to go. And I can reframe. You get to do it. You're lucky that you're healthy. Like, all these things. But when it comes time to put the clothes out the night before, I'm still like, blah.
Yeah, and you've already decided you're going to do it too.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and Marie, I can 100% relate with this. And I'm the teacher sometimes.
Yeah.
But I don't know why. In all reality, if you woke up the next morning, you're not going to sleep in.
Right.
You're not a sleep in kind of person.
I know that is true.
Right.
Mindy.
You're lying to yourself the night before. Saying, "Oh, I wish I could sleep in." No, you don't. You just don't want to go.
I know. I love it when it's like a holiday or a snow day and you can't go.
Yes.
I just love those
Yes.
days.
But like at the same time, there's something about anticipating activities. And that's what I mentioned earlier is when I looked ahead to the week and I saw all of the activities, I immediately had all of this, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do. And deciding to put that aside, I'm like, I can't even look at next week yet because I do have that dread. I don't know why I have the dread of activities, and all the activities are fun and I have chosen each one of them.
Right. No, I can relate to that, Mindy.
The things that I dread are all things financial. Like if I have to call a customer service rep to talk about something or dispute something, or I think it's just out of my comfort zone. So I never know how I'm going to refute their answer if they don't give me the answer I want,
Right.
And so I just dread it and I avoid it. And then last week I had to do that. I had to call the bank. And then afterwards, I was really frustrated with the customer service I got. So I thought, I just got to quit thinking about this. I've given it too much of my life after it was over. Life is too short. And I do that with grocery shopping. I would say that's my chore that I
put
hate
that
the
down
most.
there too, Julie.
Yes, I sit and think, I ruminate on how the store shelves are going to be empty. They're not going to have what I want. And there's going to be any cashiers. I'll have to go through the self-checkout and so on. And then I just waste a lot of energy. And then I might even come home and share all that with John.
Well, and then you have to unload the trunk. That's a terrible activity.
Yeah, and then you have to cook it. You have to do something with all of it so it doesn't go bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we need to reframe these things that we're dreading all the time.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I will try to help turn our conversation. So something I was dreading was when I looked at this week and every single night there was a basketball game. And I was like, oh, those are late nights. I'm going to be low on sleep. So that makes me cranky thinking about not getting enough sleep. I get cranky. Before I haven't even lost the sleep.
Right.
So one of the things that when I sat down and I was journaling about the week, I was like, you know what? Like my boys made the basketball team. Like if they had not made the teams, we would not be in this situation. And then I was like, oh, I'm so glad they made the teams. And it just completely changed my attitude about the 5 late nights in a row.
Right.
I'm like, I get to go watch my boys play basketball because they made the teams.
And this is a season. Like basketball season will end. It's not 5 nights a week for the whole year.
Exactly. And thankfully, it's not that way every week. It just happened to hit this week. But yes. So
yeah. Good for you, Mindy.
Well, the boys with the basketball, that's easy, calling the insurance company or financial things. I'm like, oof, I don't have a fix for that. That's just bad.
Well, I know that some of these things are kind of lighthearted, but I also know that some of our what's missing and disappointments are truly grievous, and they're dark and they're difficult. And obviously this stuff can apply to that too. Did you have anything this month that you just felt like this is a hard one? And maybe you didn't even all the way reframe it, but the principles were helpful.
Well, for me, I just realized that I still have to allow for grief and sadness, that, it's going to come. It's going to come in waves. It's not linear. It's not something you're just one and done with, like it's going to keep coming up, that you have to deal with it. And I think when I restarted this book, I was really struggling with how could I possibly reframe my negative thoughts about John's cancer? Like, I can't spin this into positive, I can't just expect I'm not going to be sad. I'm not going to be lonely. I'm not going to be devastated by it. I mean, that is, I just feel like I have permission to do that in these cases. I mean, I do. And I have to heal. Like, I can't just ignore it. And I at the same time, I just can't reframe it into something good. But so my action is to just focus on accepting what has come my way, and I think I have accepted that it is happening, but I'm still in that I don't want this, like this is not my life plan. I don't want this. And I try to remember that I'm in good company, and, in the garden, Jesus didn't want what was coming, but he accepted it. And so what I really want to focus on is to learn that I can grieve, but I don't have to fall into self-pity, that those are two different things, but it's just going to take a constant fight. I don't want negative thinking to rule out the possibility of anything good in my life. I don't want this to crush me. And I said something to somebody last week. I said, I really believe that the best part of my life has already happened. And she was like, oh, don't ever say that, because you just don't know. And it's not like that something can be different, but it doesn't have to be bad. And we just don't want different, we don't want different. And so it's just hard to imagine anything good in the future, but that's where faith comes in. And I have to trust God that there is something good out there. And just in the meantime, stay busy with what I am to be doing in this moment. How am I to be the best me in this moment for John and for our family? How to walk through something like this. That's what I want to be.
You're a good example to me. I feel like you set a good example, and I think a good example for our listeners. I think, like, even hoping to get to the point where you can say, like you said, you're at the point right now where you're not at the point where you can say that, or you're still at the point where you're saying, I don't want this. And in my mind, I think, well, is it even realistic to get to the point where I wouldn't say I don't want this? Like, I feel like just your example of even wanting to accept it and trust God so completely that you would say, okay, is an example to people.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever say I want it, but I do want to get to the point where I'm not fighting it, like, why God? And, or this isn't fair. Like, I don't want to live that way either. And I just had to think, this is coming for all of us at some point, I feel like it's early for me, but it's coming for all of us. And most people make it through, I mean, I think about my mom a lot because she lost my dad 10 years ago, and, she just didn't see a way forward. And then, I mean, when it happened, I mean, she did great. I mean, God's grace doesn't come until you need it, and I'm a planner and a prepper, and I like to think I'm going to have everything I need right now. And you don't, you have it when you need it. And so it's encouraging to look at other people. And I've known several people that have walked through this very same situation, and most people make it, they go on, and that's encouraging.
Yeah.
That's a way to reframe and replace negative thoughts. That's an example of,
even just looking at other people.
Yeah, that's not that I'm like making it rosy and like it's a good thing, but doesn't have to be the end of the world either, you know.
I think, I don't know, there have been times where Bryce and I have faced what felt like, what seemed at the moment, what was at the moment, a cataclysmic thing in our life. And it's weird to be on this side of it and look back and say, oh, okay, like we did walk through that. You know, I feel like there's scars that you take with you sometimes from seasons, but you won't stay in that cataclysmic season for the rest of your life. You know, to know that another season will happen. And really, as Christians, our final hope is not even on this earth. So, there was one time that was a health concern, and I remember focusing on, well, it's not necessarily, my joy won't necessarily be in this life, and accepting that and accepting that the true joy would be in heaven. And that's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother discussion. But realizing where your hope and your joy lies, it's not in people of this world, and it's not on this earth. It's in Christ alone. And that surpasses every circumstance, every valley, every mountaintop we'll walk through. And that's hard to get to that point, but that is the ultimate hope that we three profess to look to.
Yeah, as Christians, we can grieve differently, knowing the whole story and that this is not all there is. So there is appropriate grief, but there's also, you know, I guess at some point it's time to live again, you know.
Yeah. Well, listeners, if you are reading this book along with us, we would love to hear from you. How have you been putting the principles into practice? What have you gotten out of the things that Julie Gordon has written about? It's so encouraging for us to know how other people are applying these things. So if you would message us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast or email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com, we'd love to hear from you. And Julie and Mindy, this was so good this month. This had so many lessons, and yet I know the book is full of so many more. So I just look forward to what we're going to learn in lesson 3.
Yeah, I am too. And I have had a couple of listeners reach out and say they bought the book. So I'd love to hear from you guys about, you know, what you're learning and your perspective on all of this.
Exactly. Because we've talked about the big things and the very little things. We've talked about it all. I mean, this applies to every facet of your life. So
Right. Well, before we go, let's go into I'm a Fan. Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
As a perfect segue from our topic, I had a not ideal situation happen to me last week. I had ordered the turkey, several sides, and 2 pies from a local business for Thanksgiving. The day before Thanksgiving, I went to go pick up all of my stuff, and they had sold one of my pies. And I started to go down the deep, dark hole. I even called Bryce. I said, I am so stressed about this one pie. I was really looking forward to this one pie. Where am I going to find a pie the day before Thanksgiving? I mean, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I know I'm being ridiculous, but I'm completely stressed about this pie. Okay.
Yeah.
Here goes Mindy driving to Aldi. I go into Aldi because my daughter and I are making a charcuterie board. I find an Aldi double crust apple pie.
Really?
I was wanting an apple pie, and that was the type of pie that had gotten sold out from under me. And so we cooked the pie along with all the other things. That was my favorite part of Thanksgiving.
Oh.
This Aldi double crust apple pie that came in and swooped me off my feet that day before Thanksgiving saved the day.
Aldi saves the day.
Aldi saved the day. It was amazing. And so much so that when we're all standing around, I had already had a piece, and I'm looking at everybody and I'm like, I'm afraid somebody's going to eat the last piece. So I eat the second. I eat a second piece. I have to get the last piece. I'm like, this is my pie.
Oh, that's great. Well, now maybe you can get it for Christmas too.
I can't believe how good this pie was, y'all. It was
it frozen or fresh, Mindy?
It was fresh, and the apples were sliced pretty thin.
Their fresh pies, yeah.
Yeah, like the apples weren't in big chunks. They were thinly
That sounds
sliced. It wasn't
perfect.
too sweet. It was the perfect
Awesome.
apple pie. I will be buying this again. So thank you,
All right.
Aldi. You saved the day.
Yay! And listeners, if you want more tips for Aldi, you can go back a few weeks, and we had a whole thing on Aldi. I think it was around the end of September, early October. So there's so many good things there. That's wonderful, Mindy. Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
Well, I'm a fan of a sweatshirt that I'm actually wearing.
Ooh.
And Mindy, after I think a couple weeks ago, you had a sweatshirt on that was your I'm a fan, and it was like a animal print, but it was black.
Yes.
And you said you'd gotten it at Walmart. So
From
I
Walmart.
went that day to Walmart because I was going to get this sweatshirt. I'm not real familiar with Walmart, so I'm wandering around, having trouble finding it. And then something catches my eye, and it's a lady picking the sweatshirt up off the rack and putting it in her basket. And it was the last one.
Are you serious?
So
Oh
I
my
didn't get it.
gosh.
But they had some others on the next rack.
Yeah.
And it was even, I think it was a different brand. It's Time and True women's crew neck sweatshirt. And it came in, this is called Sea Turtle. It's like a sage green.
Yeah.
And they have it in a yellow and a black and a camo. But I love it. It's really just like yours. It has the slits on the side. It's a little longer in the back.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a
Lightweight
different
material.
brand. Really lightweight. I can put it over my workout clothes, but I've also put it on with black pants and worn it to church. So,
Oh, wow. That's a
Yeah.
wide variety of occasions that sweatshirt works
well,
for.
it kind of looks like a sweater more than a sweatshirt.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely need a link
Yeah.
to this in our show notes, especially with Christmas coming up.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Walmart.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Well, I am also a fan of a clothing item, and I rarely am, but I was ordering some pants from Old Navy, and I know that you were raving last year, Mindy, about your, it had 7 names, Power Soft.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, whatever
true.
those
I have
leggings
those.
were. I don't remember what they were.
Yes. I'd have to look up the exact name, but
It
yes.
has 7/8 in the length.
the
And
7/8 length, power soft, side pocket, high waisted, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, these are called Old Navy's Mid-Rise Breathe On, and both of the letters are capitalized ON, jogger pants for women. So Mid-Rise Breathe On, jogger pants for women. Why don't they have shorter names at Old Navy?
Yeah.
I don't understand. But in the details, it says, relax. This isn't one of those bad dreams when you're walking around without any pants. It's just that our new Breathe On fabric is so feather soft and comfy, you'll feel like you've got nothing on at all. But don't worry, these joggers have got you covered. And you guys, they're great. I wore these on a trip last week in the car. It was just like wearing pajama pants, but they're not. You can just wear them in a variety of situations. And we are hunkering down now, going into the dark part of the year. You can just put these right on at 4:30 when it gets dark and wear them right up until bed.
I love the description of them.
I know the description's so fun.
Yeah. And who are we kidding? You can also wear them all day long. That's what I do. So
I mean, it sounds like a perfect combination. If you just put all of our I'm a fans together, like put Julie's sweatshirt on
Yes.
with Marie's pants and eat the apple pie all by yourself.
Yes.
I mean, doesn't that sound lovely?
That is a way to sit down with your reframing journal. You won't even need to reframe after that.
Everything is
pie.
pure bliss after that.
Yes. So listeners, we will put links to Julie's sweatshirt and my pants, and you know where to find Aldi. You can't put a link to Aldi, but you know where to find them. All right, Julie and Mindy, I look forward to talking with you guys next week.
All right.
Great.
Bye.
All right, we'll talk to you later. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.